Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Min. I'm your co-host with Debbie from NDIS Property Australia, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast. A show explains, highlights, guides, and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDIS world. Debbie, how are you?
I'm good, Min. Yourself?
Awesome. What's our topic today about, please?
We are going to be talking about a bit of a new topic for us, SIL homes for sale.
What's a SIL home, Debbie?
Okay, so a SIL home is essentially a regular home that, in this context that we're talking of, that is being rented by a SIL provider to tenant clients that they're looking after.
In the traditional sense out there in the marketplace for the last 5-10 years, what is a SIL home out there, Debbie, out there?
Well, SIL, of course, stands for Supported Independent Living. So what we're talking about here are homes that are rented by a disability organisation to accommodate their clients who do not need accessibility in general. They don't need specialist disability accommodation homes. They don't have special wheelchair requirements or spatial requirements or that sort of thing.
Is that comment correct? They don't need accessibility?
Well, no. I guess really it's the definition of who qualifies for SDA. So this is for people who don't qualify to live in an SDA home and have SDA funding. They might still have certain accessibility needs.
So it's possible that someone who's in a wheelchair could be living in a SIL home, group home at the moment, yeah?
Yeah.
So put that on ice for a second. Where is the SDA market overall? Where does SDA sit in the NDIS world? And how does this SIL home topic relate to what we do here and the SDA side of things overall? Yes.
Yeah. So to start with, where is the SDA market? We're currently in the situation of having pretty much oversupply in most areas of Australia where there is land available to build SDA at reasonable prices. So it's very difficult now to find properties, house and land packages that are affordable for investors, that are feasible investments for investors, that they're going to get an ROI that they're looking for. There's obviously the apartment side of things, which is really where we see a lot of the SDA future going. But we've also become aware over all of the dealings and SIL providers that we are now connected to, we meet all the time in our business, and we hear the same thing all the time. They need homes. But
their words are always going to be, how much is the landlord wanting us to pay for it?
Yeah.
And we keep on saying, no. It's what the SDA funding is for the participants that gets paid into the house to the landlord. So there's a breakdown of understanding of what an SDA home is or does versus what these service providers have in terms of their participants to get a SIL home. So there's a lot of that coming our way. And we keep telling them, hey, it's not about you paying it. There's no offer. It's whatever the SDA funding is provided for the participants. And Debbie, there's been a lot of, misunderstanding, lack of clarity, lack of transparency in the provider world, who are either unregistered or registered providers, in how they operate within a SDA world, inside the overall NDIS world, I guess, yeah.
Because they still don't really understand, a lot of them, what SDA is. It's literally the bricks and mortar, and it's funding the participant has in their plan to pay the rent.
So, moving on, we know how hard it has been for participants, NDIS participants, to get SDA funding as per the required needs, be it 1-to-1 in a villa or an apartment, or 1-to-2 or 1-to-3 or 3-to-1, 3-to-2-to-1, whatever you want to call it, the ratios there. So that has been the situation in the last many years now. So here we are today talking about a different topic, which is SIL homes. So if you can't beat them, you join them, is the old saying, Debbie.
Yeah.
So, we know how hard and difficult and challenging it is to curate, deliver, procure participants and deliver product for the SDA world. So we keep on being asked, what else you got? Do you have anything non-SDA? So it's been on our mind for the last 3 years or so of how can we produce or create or deliver homes that are suitable for participants and providers that may not be SDA. And everyone's been talking a big game for the last few years about the concept of this topic, but no one's really delivered. We're trying to do our best to try and deliver SIL homes for construction around Melbourne. We've been a big believer of Melbourne for many years now, and we're focusing our efforts on Melbourne itself. But Debbie, as you know, as you said earlier, SDA housing is pretty much equilibrium or oversupplied in many parts of Melbourne. So, but back to the overall scheme, Debbie. SDA is only 3.84% of the entire system.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people out there that need a home to live in.
Group homes are in group homes.
The group home or whatever, that they are supported 24/7 by a SIL provider, but they don't need SDA. And the SIL, as I said before, the SIL providers are struggling to find these properties. They may already be looking after these clients of theirs in big group homes, the legacy homes, the big institutional homes, and they've got nowhere else to put them. So they literally have them living in these very not fit for purpose dwellings. As Min said, they may be in a wheelchair. They might not qualify for SDA for whatever reason, but they still need 24/7 care or significant amount of care per day, and they need a home to live in.
And as we know, when these providers come to an SDA provider or a SDA investor with a normal participant and seeking refuge and accommodation, they get rejected because they don't have the SDA funding, which defeats the purpose of why we're even doing this, to provide accommodation and housing. So if there's a gap there or resistance or a challenge, a wall between what an SDA investor wants and what the providers want and the participants need, I think we got to provide a different solution. And our solution really here is if we can start finding investors who cannot afford SDA,
yes,
or are finding SDA too hard, too complex, too risky,
yeah,
let's produce a normal product. A normal product is maybe a 4-bed, 2-bath, 2-car, or 4-bed, 3-bath, 2-car with slight modifications to the design, to the measurements, to the hallway, to the doorways, maybe one accessible bedroom, bathroom, accessibility there, Debbie.
Yeah.
Just to allow some form of acceptance in a community for a provider.
Yeah. So essentially, it's going to be maybe a partially accessible home designed for co-living.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is not an SDA home. This is like a normal house with slight modifications, small modifications.
So what is the cost of a house like this? How much is it lower than an SDA?
Well, first of all, it's a normal house cost.
Yeah.
Plus 30 or 40 grand.
Yeah.
Right? For one room accessible, big accessible, right? For 2 accessible rooms and hallways and kitchen and open up.
Marginally more.
Maybe 60, 70-ish, I think. That's it.
So I think the concept is that we envisage these really being a type of a co-living home. They might all be ensuite bathrooms if you can afford something like that, or at least having an extra bathroom in the property. And they're designed for multiple tenants, but also for a care team to be able to work in the property. But they're not officially an NDIS house. They're not an SDA house at all. However, they're going to appeal to SIL providers to rent
as a head lease
so that they can rent them to their clients.
So imagine this product being a co-living-ish, accessible-ish kind of product, right? And call it a co-living accessible product with 1 or 2 accessible bathroom en-suites or shared bathrooms to be used by a care provider with 2 or 3 participants.
Mm. Now, what would be the benefit to the investor?
Well, first of all, they can't get into SDA. It's too expensive, number one. So a price point is much more lower, easier for an investor to get into, number one. Number 2, minimal risk. I say minimal risk is the key word.
Lending.
Lending is much more easier because it's a normal house. For slightly higher rental. So if the rental is $600 a week, maybe it's $700 instead, or $750. If it's $700 a week, maybe it's $850. So it's a little bit extra there, because it gives the investor what they wanted to do, which is basically an investment in the market, NDIS, number 1.
An ethical investment.
2, and a much lower risk product, because this product, this home, is basically a normal house. It's a normal house.
So your exit strategy is also that it is a normal house.
Yes.
Which could be used for co-living. And we know that is an option that can attract very good returns. But, if your ultimate aim of investing in NDIS housing is to get a cash flow, to have a good income, but also to provide homes for NDIS participants, then this should tick all the boxes. Especially if you're buying it in an area where you're going to get good capital growth as well. So you're not going to get your 10, 15% yields, but that comes with very high risk and a much higher entry point. So for a $600,000 or $700,000 price point, to be achieving $700 income a week is probably quite a good option for a lot of investors.
Good alternative.
A good alternative, exactly.
It's a better alternative than the $600 a week normal house.
Yep.
It's a better alternative than the empty $1.2 million house you're about to buy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just lower risk.
Yep.
Lower price.
Now, talk to me about the demand for these houses, Min.
We've reached out to one of our key SDA providers in Melbourne, and they've reached out to a lot of the big SIL providers, and they love the concept of this SIL home kind of product, because they can't get into a normal home.
Because of the rental market.
They can't get into an SDA home because they're being rejected by the SDA investors. They have nowhere to go. And also they're being phased out, squeezed out, because the group home's being phased out. Now, Debbie, the word group home, does that apply to SIL homes and SDA homes, or SDA homes only?
Well, generally when we talk about group homes, we're only talking about SDA because that's the context within which we're talking.
Oh.
But yes, of course.
The government's saying they want to phase group homes out.
Yeah.
So I assume that applies to all products.
Absolutely. When those recommendations came out, it was in the overall, home and living recommendation, nothing particularly relating to SDA.
Which means there's a time frame left, expiry date of these group homes, which means they will no longer exist, which means these providers and these participants must go somewhere anyway.
Yep.
So it's inevitable that they must move to it.
Now, what kind of a guarantee would an investor have that they're going to get a SIL provider renting it?
If we bring this product to market around Melbourne, they will have head leases attached to it. So it won't be a matter of, hey, here's a SIL home and no provider and no lease. No, we would pre-engage and pre-assess and predetermine what the rough market rent is, plus a little bit extra, come to terms with that, with the provider, the SIL provider, and they would attach that head lease for 1, 2, 3 years to the package, and it's sold as is. That way the investor knows exactly who's signing up the lease with them at completion. That is as much as a guarantee or assurances that it is provider-led and signed head lease, so they pay the rent no matter what to the investor.
So it's a very different play to the SDA property market.
Yes. So for those investors who don't want to invest in SDA because it's too expensive, too much high risk, then look at alternatives. And the alternatives are a normal house, a co-living house, which is up to $1 million, I think, out there, or a hybrid of the two, which is going to be a co-living accessible kind of house, SIL home here, which is $700,000-ish, give or take 50 to 80 grand, give or take. Yeah. So it's just an alternative, Debbie. And last, if you don't like the SIL house, then buy a normal house. Hey, no big deal. But at least we are sticking within the confines of our ethos here, Debbie, which is NDIS property around Australia. So we're not an SDA business where we are, but we want to show that we are thoughtful and open-minded enough to give our listeners, our investors options and our developers options on what to do when you can't afford SDA or don't want to SDA or have an empty SDA. Please keep an open mind to allow for providers and participants who are SIL only to come in and pay market rent to your empty SDA house. Yes.
Yeah. So look, it's just really an additional and an added level supporting the NDIS housing arena.
Yeah.
And it's needed. So look, if you do have interest in this, we are putting together this product with our contacts in Melbourne. So we don't have any ready to purchase yet, but it will be coming very soon.
If you can't play tennis, play table tennis. Yeah, that's a good analogy. Okay. But yeah, we are working hard in the background with providers and designers and builders to look at alternatives to SDA, because the SDA market in some areas are just shot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too much already. And we're looking at alternative products, because I think if people, Debbie, where do you see the SDA market in a place like Melbourne in the next year or so, a year or 2 years? Because you and I have looked at some recent data from a lender, Debbie, that you've seen in a red chart spreadsheet, and you were surprised with some numbers.
I was really surprised with some numbers. I mean, a lot of them backed up what we already knew in terms of pipeline development in some of the outlying areas and new estates, but there was a few areas there that shocked me with the number of loans that have been processed for SDA builds in those areas.
What we've been missing in our business education, knowledge, experience has been what NDIS home loans have been approved for construction. We've never seen that.
Yeah, we get hints of it here and then, and we've always taken that into account, especially when we're doing any data analysis, but we don't have the full picture.
Now we do.
And it is going to change everything, certainly about the way we advise and recommend SDA properties to buy, because the market has shifted so drastically in the last 9 months.
I want to use an example here without mentioning a suburb name, just number, right? Said suburb has 25 existing SDAs in that suburb. Not postcode, that suburb. There's another 33 construction loans or 33 houses under construction in the same suburb. So 25, 33, making it 57, almost 60 houses in that said suburb as built SDA. Debbie, there's no way in hell, wrong word, sorry, no way
On earth
could those 33 people who have a construction loan right now have known that there were 33 other builds in the same suburb for SDA.
No.
And had they known, they would not have done so.
Yep.
Because those 33 will be empty as well, on top of most of the other 25 that are currently.
Yeah. Now, why didn't we know about them? Because we work with a select number of builders. There's a lot of builders who come to us and we have rejected them outright because of whatever reason we've come across during our due diligence in looking into what that builder does, how they do it, who they work with. So I guess in one sense that means that we have missed out on a lot of intel, because we have maybe lost track of exactly how many properties are being marketed out there in certain areas.
But Debbie, the thing is, if we predict a forecast a certain suburb as in a bad area, too far away, no amenities, we shouldn't be there at all. How are we supposed to know that the next 12 months there's 50 other random builders out there building dodgy, cheap SDA builds on small blocks in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden there's 60, 70, 80 of them sitting there empty.
Yep.
So how are we supposed to know?
No, we don't.
No one knows.
Yeah.
Only the lender knows. So, at the end of the day, be careful who you take your advice from. Do your research. Ask for more research from other people, because there are so many empty houses out there in the wrong areas, right? And we all know what areas we're talking about here. It's public knowledge, okay? But if it's in a good area, built up area, near amenities, hospitals, parks, shops, medical centres, shopping centres, that's common sense, people. That's common sense. Train station, bus stops, Westfields, cafes, parks, hospitals, medical centres, that's common sense. If your estate is not near any of those, you are in one of those in trouble locations.
Yeah. So again, though, it comes down to the fact that We see the market in Melbourne as being fully saturated when it comes to house and land, unless you are in one of those great locations, unless you have a really good product.
Infill, knockdown rebuilds.
Yep.
Middle ring suburbs.
Yep.
Yes.
Apartments. So if you don't want to go down either of those routes because you can't afford it, or you prefer to own the land, like a lot of people really do not want to invest in an apartment in this space, a SIL home might be a really good option to consider.
And those prices are $580 to $780 price point.
Yeah.
$700 grand. It's simple.
Yeah. So no tricky lending requirements. It's a regular home. And whilst you won't get that high SDA return, which a lot of investors are not going to get anyway because they're going to have a house sitting there empty or with one tenant max, you'll have a head lease from a provider and you will have tenants in that home paying you an income from as soon as it is constructed and has its certificate of occupancy.
So watch this space. We'll be letting everyone else know about our SIL packages around Melbourne coming out in the next, month or 2 months. Please give us a call. We're working very closely with some big blue chip providers, SIL providers around Melbourne there. And on top of that, we're coming to market with knockdown rebuilds, infill areas around Melbourne, plus some pretty good blue chip locations for apartments as well, to give, choice and control to participants who need something different. So, yeah, that's where we're headed, Debbie. We're going to be very active in the coming few weeks towards Christmas, networking, talking to providers, giving different options to investors as well. We're seeing a lot of demand, a lot of movement towards apartments from investors and developers and large funds because...
as well as providers.
Yeah. A lot of the shine of SDA houses is gone off. A lot of people have been burned out there. So I think the market is turning their back on SDA houses because there's too many out there and all empty, unless it's in a good area and a good product, okay? But yeah, shout out to all those guys who are doing SDA housing differently. We support you. If you're doing it differently in terms of locations, sizes, designs, upgrades, future-proofing, yes. If you're doing those things, all good with housing. But if you're not, and you go to a project builder doing the same old small builds in a small block of land in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have trouble renting it out. And then the best you get will be $400 or $500 a week in rent. That's it, okay? So save yourself the headache. Focus on a SIL home if you don't want any risk, and save money on construction costs by doing a normal house with slight mods, okay? Debbie, any final words of advice to our listeners about SIL and SDA?
Yeah, look, just really think about why you're doing this investment. If it's all about the bottom line and it's just to get that high yield, this is maybe not for you. But if you are wanting to do that, to provide homes for people in Australia with disability who need somewhere to live, where they can be safely and more than adequately looked after by their carers and still make a decent return on investment, then I think you should really consider these. So look, watch this space and keep posted, and obviously we will update you when we actually have stock on board to sell.
And one last thing, Debbie, any advice from you to those investors who have empty SDAs out there?
Look, there are other options that you can consider. Having some income is better than none. So
you're saying if it's been empty for a while and there's no hope of a SDA participant, consider a SIL head lease? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That's one thing to consider for sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time, Debbie. Look forward to our next follow-up next week with our visitors from Melbourne who will introduce in due course. Any questions, any ideas, any topics you want us to cover, please email us on info@NDIS.Property, and we would love to talk about your topic in more detail here.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.